So I can't imagine being like, yeah, I just had to brief somebody, and now I have to go do first period. That seems a little crazy to me. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Sycamore Institute podcast. I am your host, Ethan Burke. I am a current undergraduate student at George Mason University and the National Podcast Director for the Sycamore Institute. For those of you that don't know, the Sycamore Institute is a nonprofit think tank that gives undergraduate students the opportunity to write and discuss topics such as national security, economics and trade, current events, and more. Today on the podcast, I am talking with Taylor Wilson, a current officer at the NSA and GMU alumni. With that all said, let's get started. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
So, Taylor, what can you tell me and the listeners about your journey to become the youngest employee at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence?
So I guess I can just kind of start with my journey in the intelligence community overall, because that's essentially where it all started. So I started in the NSA, National Security Agency, when I was 17 years old. I did the high school work-study internship program. And I remember when I was like 16, I was a junior in high school, and the NSA recruiters came to our school to recruit high school seniors to work at the agency. And I already knew like I wanted to do something in the government, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But I just knew that if I took on the opportunity to work at NSA, that it would kind of afford me that career advancement and that experience of already working for the government. So I just, went ahead, applied for the internship program, and ended up getting accepted in the program. And so I did the program for about a year. And then I graduated from high school, and then I also graduated from the program. And then I was on my way to college. But the issue that I ran into was that I wanted to still work at the agency, but I wanted to also go to George Mason. And so NSA is in Maryland, and GMU is in Virginia. So, you can imagine the commute would kind of be a little crazy, and with classes and things like that. So while I was in the high school work study program, I had mentors, and I had a mentor that told me about, they're called external assignments opportunities that you can do at the agency. So basically, an NSA person can go work at another agency for X amount of number of years and then come back to the agency. I reached out to so many different NSAers that worked in the different agencies across the DC, Northern Virginia area. And of course, I got a lot of no's because you can imagine I'm just getting out of high school. I'm not experienced. But I emailed this one person who used to be the deputy director of the Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center over at ODNI. And I sent my resume to him. He told me to come down to ODNI and basically offered me the position on the spot. So that is how I ended up working at ODNI. Now, how I became the youngest person in history to work for ODNI. So one day my supervisor came over to me and I said, I've noticed that like ODNI doesn't have college students or like high school students, interns that work here. And she said, yeah, in order to work here, you have to have like a lot of experience in the government. And she said, you're the youngest person to ever work here. And I was like, what? And then basically she spread the news to the strategic communications team at ODNI, who writes the articles and newsletters and they was so excited to hear about my journey in IC, and then they interviewed me and they wrote an article on me, and then here we are.
Yeah, I got you. I get you. I was just curious. So, how do you balance being a high school student and also working for the NSA? Like, I'm trying to imagine the kind of work-life balance I kind of think can be, because I know I can't imagine being like, yeah, I just had to brief somebody, and now I have to go do first period. That seems a little crazy to me.
I'm so glad you asked that, because I will say for myself, when I was, going back to when I was 17 years old and working at NSA, it was definitely an interesting experience. So how they set up our schedules senior year of high school. So we only had half a days. So we would go to school in the morning, and then around like 11 or 12, we would head to our internships and things like that. Because there were other students who also had internships too. I would go to class, I would go to school, and I'll be all dressed up in my professional attire and things like that, walking into class with flats on and heels on and things like that. And then I would leave school and head over to NSA and do my work. And I would say too, because I started so young in the agency, it was definitely a interesting experience for me, being 17 and being exposed to that type of environment, with dealing with some of the most like sensitive information in the country. So it was interesting. I had the best of both worlds. And I will say too is that it's also interesting to see how, you have to be more focused. Like typically, when you're in high school, college, people are thinking about careers and things like that, but they're more so focused on being, a college student having fun. But it's like for me, I had to keep in mind, like, okay, I have this really important job. This is the, career track I'm trying to go down. I gotta focus. I gotta, so yes, it was interesting.
Yeah, and then moving on to George Mason, I assume scheduling got a little bit easier once you got into college and you were able to pick out your own schedule, but still in keeping all your classes and all your college classes together. And how did you balance that against working at ODNI?
So I will say it was definitely not easy, because let's just say that time management was really something that I learned very quickly once I started classes at GMU, because I would wake up early in the morning, like 5 in the morning, and then I would head over to ODNI, and I worked part time. So I would get off at around 2 o'clock. And then as soon as I got on campus, I had like my first class for the day. So I would go to my dorm, put my stuff down, get my book bag, go to class. And then if I had 2, 3 classes that day, it would just be back to back because I had to pretty much stack up my classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, because during those mornings I would go to work. So it was challenging. It was challenging. I didn't really have a lot of time necessarily to do all the extra fun stuff that you would typically do in college, because either I'd be working, going to class, or if I wasn't at class I would be doing homework. If I wasn't doing homework, I'll be just exhausted because I had a long day. So yeah, it was a lot of long days, but I was able to balance it out by just every semester I would schedule my classes during certain days and then adjust my work schedule. My management over at ODNI was very understanding, and of the fact that I was in school and my schedule would change.
So, with everything going on in the world right now, how do you stay informed about global events and kind of keep up with the news and all that?
Working in the IC, I say it's you have to stay on top of current events that are happening, because essentially that's pretty much the premises of where our work goes into, is whatever is going on in the world. But I mean, we read news articles and things like that. It's just kind of rooted in our work. So yeah, I can't go too far.
No, I understand. I definitely understand.
Yeah.
I would rather you tell me less than say too much. So
Yeah. Yes, but yes, I will say, if working in the IC, you have to stay on top of that type of stuff, because that is literally where our work kind of it surrounds itself around.
is there anything that you could recommend, like a certain newspaper that you're like, yes, this is like what I read?
I would recommend any news outlet or media outlet that isn't biased per se. Washington Post is really good with their reporting on information and things like that.
What skills do you think would be crucial for success in the intelligence community?
So, one of the first skills, and I'm just going to speak generally, just to have when you are pursuing a career in the IC, is first have an open mind. Being like working actually inside the IC, there is literally so much you can do. I think there is a big misconception that you have to either be an analyst or a computer scientist or something of that nature in order to work in these spaces. But when I tell you, you can literally do whatever you want in the IC. You can be an accountant, you can be a HR manager, you can be a chief of staff, you can be a lawyer, you can literally do whatever you want. So definitely have an open mind when you think about potentially like looking into careers within the intelligence community. The second thing is understand that working in the IC, you need mentors. I always encourage people to have mentors, someone that you can just ask questions to and get information from, because the intelligence community is full of information. It's full of history, full of rich history, full of so many different things, that even in my 7 years of working in the IC, I still don't know half of the things within the IC. And my mentors keep me on top of different knowledge and different information. So definitely understand, like, you're going to need some type of guidance, some type of mentor, especially like within your first few years of working in the intelligence community. Another skill that I would say is, I know this is going to sound kind of cliche, but professionalism is everything. You never know who's going to walk into your office. You never know who's going to come into the agency. You never know who you have to go and meet. There has been plenty of times, I would say, in my experience, where I would literally walk into work one day and get hit with, hey, the director of NSA is coming to our office. Hey, the CIA director is coming. Like, you have to just be able to have that skill of being professional, um, just bringing your best self and preparing for anything random to happen.
So speaking of things that are like kind of random and like that kind of pop up, are there any challenges that you faced as like a young professional in the IC?
I'm actually very glad that you asked that question, because when I tell you, there's been so many challenges I have faced as a young professional, and it's not even just situations like just random situations such as like, oh, the NSA director is coming and you're just it's also just kind of like with myself, just like I said previously, the IC is full of so many different opportunities and so many different career tracks and skill communities and just so much. And when you're young, it's like you have so much energy, you have so much, like, you're optimistic, you want to do everything, you're curious about everything. And it's like I have ran into the challenge of really trying to figure out what else I wanted to do. Um, because it's literally so much. So that is one challenge I faced. And then also, I mean, just finding your place in the IC. I mean, I work with people who have been in the intelligence community for 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years. And here I am just, I've been working at the IC for 7 years now, but I still feel like I'm still new and there's still a lot more that I could learn and experience. So just finding that confidence in myself. But then, like, that's what I said earlier, that it's important to have mentors to just help guide you and to help inform you and to kind of help ease that point. Because everybody that has worked in the IC for that many years has been, the new to the IC, didn't know a lot. So just finding that confidence in yourself is also something I've dealt with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel like not trying to get like overwhelmed by the work is super important. So you talked a bit about mentorship. How do you think your role as like a mentor within the NSA has influenced your perspective on the intelligence community and on the field as a whole?
So, I have mentored high school work studies that have came into NSA. And so I mentored people who were just starting their career in the IC and at NSA. And not only that, but they were, young. And um it was an interesting experience because like I said, I came in the agency as a high school work study. So a lot of my mentoring consisted of me pretty much providing that help and support that I had when I was their age coming into NSA with my mentors. A lot of times I would talk to them about pretty much inform them about different things about NSA, but also just kind of encouraging them to not feel like they're the oddball because they're young and they're starting their career in the agency, and just to be confident. And it really taught me a lot because it was, like I said, it was kind of a nostalgic moment for me because, like I said, I came in the agency when I was their age, so it was just like I felt like I was kind of giving back to my younger self. So yeah, but it was a wonderful experience, a very humbling experience, and actually, I'm still very much in touch with one of my mentees, and she's doing excellent. She's more confident now. So it's a very humbling experience. I love just helping people.
I like what you said of how it feels like you're giving back to your younger self. That must be really cool to be able to tell any of the mentees, like, I was where you were so and so many years ago. That must be a very cool experience to have.
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on the more of where do you think you're going to be going? Where do you see yourself? I'm sure you've never been asked that question before in your life as a former high school and college student.
I will say really, man, it's so many different directions I want to go into, which is, like I said, is another challenge that I have as a young professional, just really trying to narrow down exactly what I want to do because there's so many different things I want to do. I want to go overseas. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like, it's a lot. So I would say to that question, I'm not too sure. I'm really not too sure, but I know that in the near future, I definitely want to reroute pretty much what I'm doing now in my career. I want to kind of do a little reroute and try something a little different. And that is probably something that I would say is a great benefit of working in the IC, because if you want to pivot your career and things like that, if you're not enjoying, this particular career track that you're on, you have the ability to do that. And I mean, NSA offers all types of trainings, all types of opportunities and things like that for you to be able to do that. So we'll just see what happens.
Definitely, like, I'm super excited. I think that's going to be a very cool thing. And going overseas especially sounds interesting in the IC.
Yes.
How has being a student leader at GMU prepared you for a job in the intelligence community? You were telling me about how it was so tough to balance the GMU. Like, I've been waiting for this question because when you were talking about how tough it was scheduling classes and your job, I was just thinking, so when is she going to mention the fact that she started one of the biggest intelligence and like student organizations at GMU? When does that become part of the story?
Oh my God, Ethan, I absolutely love this question because it just takes me back. I first initially thought about creating a intelligence community space in general for GMU students. So first off, I will say the balancing out part was hard. It was difficult. Like I said before, you know, it was already a challenge having to balance out working and going to school full time. But to add on, ICN, a student organization that was growing, it was so unexpected the way that ICN grew. Because I remember when we first started the organization and we put out our flyers and things like that, we were seeing so many students signing up and coming out to our events and things like that. We were like, whoa, we was not expecting this. And then it got to the point where professors and the Shard School knew about it and the Hayden Center knew about it. So it was a lot. It was a lot having to balance that out. I will say I had no free time at all when I was leading ICN. But I will say that I absolutely enjoyed it. And I absolutely just enjoyed seeing the impact that it had on the GMU campus. I enjoyed seeing the impact that it had on the students. I love feeling as if I am not just doing these things, putting together these events, but I'm inspiring students at George Mason to pursue careers in the IC, to, explore and discover various different opportunities that they can do if they do want to pursue a career in the IC. It was a very wonderful experience. I met so many GMU students that had so many just passions and aspirations for working in the IC. And it was interesting because I was able to connect with GMU students because I was a GMU student. I was a college student. I was still a college student at the end of the day. These were my peers. But I was also someone who has experienced working in the IC. And it was interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I know the podcast is audio only, but Taylor had the biggest smile talking about ICN. That actually wraps up all my questions I had for you today. So with that, is there any social media or anything you want to shout out?
First of all, shout out to ICN. Make sure you follow them at GMU ICN.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hope to
Thank
meet you soon.
you.
All right, let's jump straight into the announcements. To the Sycamore Fellows, the exec board has finalized the deadlines for the upcoming semester. The first deadline will be on February 28th, and the second deadline will be on May 2nd. Please reach out to your school's branch director for any questions, comments, concerns, or for more information on these deadlines. Big shout out to GMU's Intelligence Community Network with this episode. It was great working with them. I was planning this for a few months with them, this episode, and it was great to be able to sit down, talk with them, and go to a few of their events, which were really cool. Any fellow that's interested in going into intelligence should definitely look into the GMU ICN so that way they can have good networking opportunities. And a final thank you and shout out to our guest today, Taylor Wilson. It was great to talk with her. I think this was a really good episode. So definitely one that I was not expecting. Some of the answers was stuff that I didn't even know. So this was really cool to record with her. To our audience, we hope this episode has helped you and inspired you to look into the intelligence community to help you guys figure out what you guys want to do for your own path in the intelligence community. We hope that you will continue to listen and follow this podcast and share it with your fellows and friends so that you can keep up to date with what's going on in the intelligence community and get to listen to some great interviews. Until next time, keep writing, doing your research, and editing your articles. This has been Ethan Burke on the Sycamore Institute podcast. Take care.